Well, hello there. How's everybody going? Hopefully everything's going good for you guys. Looks like everybody's just starting to get settled in there, so. Huh. Well, that's weird. A lot of top fan stuff going on there. I don't know what's up with that. But I hope you guys are doing okay. So, welcome to tonight's live stream. We're going to make sure we got everything here. Hey Blondie, hey Misbehave, and hey Peg. Just gonna be a regular old live stream. since since I gotta go to a party tomorrow night, I'm gonna go ahead and get the live stream a going here, and we will get everything read and get everything started for the week. Give me just a second. Alrighty. Let's get this thing started here. Trying to think if we've got any news. We're still gearing up for the August writing contest. So be sure that you get your submissions in by August 15th for this month's for the August writing contest. And we'll be doing one in August, September, October, November, and December. The first couple will not be themed, so just whatever you want to write about. Go right ahead, go nuts. Make sure it's at least a little bit, in the horror realm and a little bit on brand there. Make sure it's not going to get me. Make sure it's not anything that's going to get me demonetized as well. That would be great. I know Lou had some trouble with that last time, maybe, but winner will get a signed book, and which leads me into my next one. I'm sure you do okay, Blondie. Which leads me to my next one. The Dollar General Beyond book is up on Amazon now. Hang on, let me see if I can find that thing, and I'll send you guys a link. Oh, come on. Things just being stupid. There it is. Alrighty. So I will get a link that I can send to you guys so that you guys can order it if you want. Now, if you're on the $10 tier list there on my Patreon, you already get a copy, so don't worry about that. It should be signed. I have to remember to do that this time. Alrighty, that's a link to the Douglas Gage stuff in case you guys want to order one. It's $20 through Amazon. I'm not really in a financial place to buy a bunch of extra copies this time and sell them, but we'll figure something out. Let's see, and that should get you where you want to go there. The paperbacks on there are like $20. Usually I would offer a signed copy for 25, but like I said, I'm just really not in a financial place right now to be able to do that. But eventually I would like to. Got to post that. It just got live a couple hours ago, actually. I had some problems with the thumbnail on the cover. Let me know what you think of the cover. I made it myself. getting pretty all right at those now. And yeah, if you like the Dollar General Beyond stuff, that's what that is. That's in book form. That's the first book. There will be another one, God willing, very soon. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. We'll go with that. I'm not sure I'm gonna do another book before the end of the year. Usually I do too. I've got a couple ready to go, but I just don't know if that's something I'm gonna do. We'll see. We'll play it by ear. There will be a compilation at the beginning of next year, like usual. I usually do 2 books a year. Um, Thank you, Blondie. I liked the cover. I thought it came out pretty well. I didn't get the usual guy to do it. I did it myself. I like making thumbnails. It's a lot of fun. I showed it to my mom, who is my best book reviewer, and she said it had kind of a noir-y look about it. And I was like, yeah, it sounds like what I was going for. But yeah, so Dollar General Beyond, writing contest coming up. Yeah, that's really about all the news. If you're not on the Discord, come join us on the Discord. I think Peg had put, no, I think Blondie had put one up further in. I will pin that so that it's there. So that no matter when it comes on, you guys can join if you want to. And trying to think if we got anything else going on. My chickens get here Monday, so that should be fun. I've been talking with my folks about doing some stuff around here, maybe. Since I know some of you guys live Florida adjacent, I might like to do some spooky stuff around here. And I'll let you guys know. That way if you're close, you can come and have a look. Some of you guys would probably drive to come see stuff like that. But it's probably not going to be this year, but it might be next year. Just playing around with some ideas. I like my parents' farm, and I'd like it to be profitable. I think that's everything. Haven't done a lot, I guess. Mostly been writing, trying to come up with a decent writing thing. Hopefully they're tasty chickens. Just trying to get a better writing strategy down so I can write a little more and write a little more consistently. But yeah, that's really about all that's going on over here. I would like to do some like YouTube shorts or like some TikToks about the chickens and stuff. Show you guys show you guys around a little around here because it's a cool place. There's a lot of potential here. But yeah, that's really about all we got going on. Let me pull up some stuff and we will read some stories, I think. Let's see. This Friday's story is going to be a grandpa story. So, tonight's story is going to be a grandpa story. So make sure you don't miss that. That's going to be a lot of fun. In fact, let me go in and set that up while I'm thinking about it, so that it doesn't come out late. Because we're gonna read some stories, like, for definite. So I don't want to get into reading stories and forget to put the grandpa story up, which I will do. There. That should get that. Alrighty. Cool. It is a good one. I had, hey, CLC, I'm glad you could make it. I had intended to have Horror on the Rocks do some voice work for it, but it just didn't come together. He had sent it ahead of time, and I had lost it, and I hate that, because he did a really good job on it. We'll get him on again. He does good stuff. He was our... What did I do? Okay, there we go. He was our Mystery Man voice in the Mystery Man story, so I like having him on. He does good work. But next week, next Friday, is going to be a Dr. Winter story, and it's going to be the debut of Mr. Seraph in Kashmir. So you won't want to miss that either. That's going to be a lot of fun too. I hope. I'm about halfway done writing it, or I was going to read it tonight, but I'm not. I'm not there yet. It needs a little more work. Um, so yeah, let's go ahead and read some stories. Um, if I got on tap here, we did the Black Site story this week. I got to write some more stories. I think we're going to do a Rayford story at the Deep Woods of Rayford on Monday. So that'll be fun. Eventually, I've got to get caught up so I can let you guys vote on stuff again. But you know how it is. It's one of them. Trying to do everything. Um, let's see here. Nice. Alrighty, so let's start with a Rayford Woods story this Monday. And this is part 16, as some of you will remember. Which will, last time, he went on a date with, oh, hang on. Yeah, last time he went on a date with Susan, and they had dinner, and he overheard some stuff from the mayor. So this is him telling Terry about it, Susan's uncle, who's kind of helping him figure out the stuff in Rayford. I know, it's been a while since we've been to Rayford. I really need to finish some series before I start new ones. But, alright, this one's called The Beatles and the Cannery. So, enjoy. So that's what we're up against. I knew there was some connection between the Beatles and the Foresters, but I didn't know it was that deep. Hang on a second. I think that was Terry. My kids are being noisy. So that's what we're up against. I knew there was some connection between the Beatles and the Foresters, but I didn't know it was that deep. They said the Beatles had come out of the woods before. Do you know anything about that? Terry scoffed. Of course I do. I wouldn't be much of a historian if I didn't. The thought of the drought of '64 was one of the worst droughts in 20 years. They say the crops burst into flames in the field because they were so dry, but that's probably an exaggeration. What isn't an if I could speak today. What isn't an exaggeration is that once the creek beds started drying up, the beetles started coming out of the dry beds and started wreaking havoc. They were eating everything. Crops on the fields, bark off the trees, livestock, people, whatever they could get. It was bad. I wasn't even a twinkle in my dad's eye yet. Blech. Hey, Val. I wasn't even a twinkle in my dad's eye yet, not for 5 more years, but it was still big news when I came along. So these bugs spend about 2 years eating the farmers alive during the summer. They always go to ground in the winter, and they always come back at the end of spring. The legend goes that Mayor Register... Try that again. Oh, no, nobody seems to know what the top fan thing is yet. If you guys figure it out, let me know. The legend goes that Mayor Register Sr. goes into the woods to find something to help the bug problem. He reads about another drought and another time the bugs came in. They got rid of them, but no one knows how. Mayor Register Sr. thinks it has something to do with the Foresters, so he goes into the woods to parlay. He comes out with something, a liquid of some kind, and it stops the bugs. It doesn't just make them go to sleep, it kills them dead. Mayor Register is a big hero. Everyone's happy. Then the town keeps making the stuff to keep the beetles away. Sounds like the foresters gave him the secret to me, I said, and Terry nodded. Yeah, me too. Problem is that no one has ever proved it. No one knows how the stuff is made. Except it kind of sounds like they do. The people at the cannery are making the stuff to keep the beetles away. Exactly. Question is, why? The beetles haven't been a problem for years. They... Excuse me. Why keep spraying? I thought about that. Dad had said something about beetles being a problem lately. Tyler had too, and I wondered if maybe they were coming back again. The spray was helping, but I guess it probably wasn't as potent as it used to be. Maybe the beetles were starting to become more of a menace, and they were scrambling to increase their potency so they could continue to fight them. Whatever the case, we need to see this cannery and find out what's going on. Hang on. Whatever the case, we need to see this cannery and find out what's going on. Terry looked at me. Terry looked at me strangely. Yeah? I raised an eyebrow at him. Well, yeah. Isn't that our next move? We need to see what's going on here. Right? Call home first. Dang it, I got a line off. A slow grin stretched across Terry's face. That's just what I was thinking, too. But I wasn't sure if you were open to a little night reconnaissance. It's dark now, I told him with a shrug. It isn't like I had anything else to do but head home. Call home first. Tell them you're staying here for the night. I don't want your parents risking the foresters to come look for you. I agreed, and he went to put a couple of things in a bag so that we could head out. Dad picked up on the second ring, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Let me guess, your car ran out of gas on the way home. No, but I am staying to talk to Terry a little while longer. I'm going to crash here again. I'll be home in the morning. Whatever you say, champ. Have fun, but be safe. I hung up and rolled my eyes. Terry tossed me a gray sweatshirt and a black knit cap as I slid the phone back into my pocket. He was wearing a similar pairing and had traded his house shoes for boots. He had packed some things in a sleek-looking net bag, and I could see flashlights and duct tape sitting at odds with the sand. And I could see flashlights and duct tape sitting at odds with some other items I couldn't identify. Your jeans are probably fine, but they'll see you from a mile away in that red shirt. We'll take your truck so as not to raise suspicions. It's got good doors, too. That's a plus if we run afoul of any foresters. We snuck out through the back door and rolled off without attracting too much attention. Rayford always looks so lonely after dark. No one's on the street for fear of running into the foresters, and all the shops turn off their lights and roll up the sidewalks after dark. It's a peaceful place, if you don't count the murderous tree creatures that are trying to take people. We rolled easily out of the cul-de-sac and onto the main street. We were heading for the old part of town, the place the town had originally been settled in, and as we drove, I kept my eyes peeled for fog. The foresters weren't small, and I'd hate to find out what they would do to my truck if I hit one. We're reading a Rayford Woods story if you're just joining us. Oh, hey, Leah. Leia. Sorry, Leia, not Leah. We're reading a Rayford Woods story if you're just joining us. It's just getting good, so have a seat. Let me see what I missed here. Okie dokie. Let's see here. 'Cause, 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 big sip. So, why do we have a cannery anyway? This is a logging town. We don't even have a waterfront in Rayford. Ah, well, you're probably too young to remember when the river still had fish in it. The pack. Try that again. The Pangorn and the Massakeek used to provide fish for the cannery, which Rayford was sure would be another thriving business. You'll never guess who owned the cannery either, I'm sure. The Registers, I said, feeling pretty confident in my guess. Hey, you got it in one. Yes, indeed. The Registers opened the first and only cannery in Rayford, and they ran the netting operation that brought the fish to their final destination, too. There's a point where the Pangorn and the Massakeek converge into a major spawning area for salmon. They put the cannery at that convergence, and for a time they were doing pretty well. Eventually, however, the river seemed so choked with garbage from Hang on. Let's try that again. Eventually, however, the river became so choked with garbage from loggers and the sawmill that the fish stopped coming. The river dried up, and now the cannery is just a relic of a bygone era. When I was younger, I can remember seeing the cans for Register's salmon, but the cannery closed when I was in high school. Seems like a million years ago now. I'm almost certain that the place had fallen to the ground. There you go. Try that one again. I was almost certain that the place had fallen to the ground by now. Have you been there before? Oh, sure. It didn't close till I was 17, and I worked there during the summer for 2 years. I remember when one of the old guys told me they were closing up. I was pretty bummed. There was always work. I was pretty bummed, but there was always work in the woods. I didn't know that you worked on the logging crew. While I was in college, it got me through 6 years and paid for my doctorate in antiquities. That was working part-time, too. Most people in this town work in the woods at some time or another. It's like a rite of passage. The woods are a part of the town and its people, and it's hard for us to escape them for long. We drove through the old part of town, and I shuddered when I saw how much of it had been overtaken. I suppose the outskirts crew hadn't been working as hard as usual, and the new growth was impressive. It was growing... Yeah. Keeps my lips from sticking together. That's better. It was growing through the old buildings and between the storefronts, and as I drove down the cracked and pitted streets, it was easy to believe that this place would be overrun in a few days. We turned down an old access road near the remains of a hardware store, and the woods encircled us as we drove deeper into the Rayford woods. I kept expecting to see foresters, but we hadn't encountered one the whole trip. I'd lived with the idea that going out at night was a death sentence, but it seemed now that it might be less dangerous than I thought. "Terry," I asked, as he turned from the window to look at me questioningly, "where are the foresters?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, where are they? They say not to go out at night because they roam after dark, but we haven't seen any of them. If it's so dangerous out here after dark, then why haven't we seen any?" Terry grunted. "Huh, it's almost like there aren't foresters roaming around after dark all the time or something." That didn't make any sense, but I could clearly see he was right. then why would they tell people to stay off the streets after dark? That's the question, isn't it? Why would they? But he stopped and flapped a hand at me. I hit the brakes. This is the spot. Drive into the woods a little bit and we'll leave it here. We're going into the woods on foot? I asked unbelievingly. What's the matter, kid? You afraid we might find something out there other than foresters? He climbed out, backpack swinging over his shoulder, and I killed the engine and came up behind him after a moment's hesitation. Some habits and rules were hard to get past. All right, that's our Rayford Woods story this week. Next time, they'll be going to the cannery, so you won't want to miss that. Let's find our next story here. I guess. Let's see here. Do you guys want to go into next week's short stories, or do you want to hear a Kashmir story? It's pretty good this week. So, let me know in the comments, and we'll go with that. I got 2 short stories, and then I've got the Kashmir story this week, which is about scouts, believe it or not. I like to write about scouts for some reason, it seems. Let's see. One of the short stories for the Tuesday Thursday is about the door that all the writers keep seeing too. So that should be a lot of fun. I definitely do a lot of those door stories. Let's see. Oh, looks like a few of you guys want the Kashmir story, so we'll probably go with that one. We'll read all of them. It's just a matter of what order we read them in. That sounds like a unanimous vote to me. Hang on. Check. Sometimes I gotta make sure there's no cord on my mic's getting a little squirrely, so sometimes I gotta make sure there's no static. Really plays hell for when I'm trying to record audiobooks. Okay, so this one is called Nature Badges, and it's about some scouts in a scout troop in Kashmir. So I hope you guys like it. Lou, you know we aren't supposed to go into the woods. Yeah, but how else are we going to get our nature badges for spotting it? Yeah, off to a great start. Yeah, but how else are we going to get our nature spotting badge, Kev? It was the first week of July, and the Jamboree was less than a week away. By Friday, they would need to have their bags packed and be ready to go to Saturday. There. And be ready to go Saturday morning for the annual campout and scout meet. They had only the next 3 days to get the badge requirements, and they had already spent a day and a half waiting on Davy Forrester to give them his map that he said he had. Oh, hi, Susie. Glad you could make it. And if he doesn't come through, we're royally boned, Lewis said. Let's just wait till next year, Lou, Kevin tried to tell him, the two of them heading past the cemetery and into town. We don't have to be first-class scouts this year. I'm tired of being a second-class scout, Kev. We have been second-class scouts for 2 years. Do you really want to see Gabriel lord it over us when he gets to be a first-class scout at the Jamboree and we don't? Kevin thought about that for a minute. And decided he really didn't like the taste of it. No, he finally whispered, kicking a rock. He'll act all superior, too, when we... Where were we? He'll act all superior, too, when we don't get it, and he does. Exactly, Lewis said. Look, we both only need one more badge to advance. This local wildlife identification badge will put us over the requirements, and then we can all three get pinned at the Jamboree. Think about it, Kev. We can be first-class scouts together and rub it in Gabriel's face when he doesn't get to boss us around. Kev liked the sound of that, and as they came to the diner, they could see Davy's red Huffy out front. The boy in question was sitting at the bar of the diner, drinking a milkshake and checking his watch, and when the two of them walked in, they weren't surprised when Mrs. Blair put down a couple of chocolate milkshakes in front of them. Hold tight for a second, guys. Somebody has just been steady texting me. Family drama. Let's see here. All right. Chocolate milkshakes. Thanks, Mrs. Blair, they both intoned, and laid a couple of bucks on the counter for the shakes. No problem, boys. Looking forward to the Jamboree? She asked as she wiped the counter. Yes, ma'am, Kevin said, sliding the straw in as he took a sip. We're going to be first-class scouts this year, Lewis said with confidence. They're going to pin us at the ceremony. That sounds lovely, boys, said Mrs. Blair. Well, you two enjoy your milkshakes, and I hope this year's camp-out is a good one. She moved off to help some other customers, and the two of them heard Davy Forrester scoff loudly. You babies ain't making first-class scout. You'd be one of the youngest to do it in 20 years. Stick with your patches, kids, and enjoy them while you have them. Lewis snorted. You sure do talk a lot of crap for someone who isn't even in high school yet. Davy smiled. Maybe that's why I never made it past second-class scout myself. But I was older than you two when I decided it wasn't for me. Davy Forrester was 13, an age that seemed lofty to the two 10-year-olds sitting next to him. He had gotten out of scouts last year, after he'd taken a shine to baseball and made the school team, but there was talk that he had refused to promote to first-class scout after some kind of misunderstanding. Everybody knew Davy, knew him and pitied him, and it wasn't just because he wasn't welcome at the Jamboree anymore. Something had changed in Davy the year before, and sometimes he looked older than his 13 years. Davy fished in his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of notebook paper. You still want it? He asked, holding it between his second and middle finger. Lewis nodded. It's the real McCoy, right? Davy nodded. It'll take you to the place in the woods where you'll see the animals you want to catalog. Be warned, though, there's a high price for the map. Lewis rolled his eyes. Yeah. Lenny told me he had to give you $2 for it. Here, he said, holding the money out like they were doing a drug deal or something. Davy made the cash disappear and handed him the map. Pleasure doing business with you, boys. Hopefully, you both make it to the Jamboree. He got up then, leaving 50 cents on the counter, and headed back to his bike. What do you think he meant by that? Kevin asked. Lewis shrugged and unfolded the map. He's just being a nit. Don't mind him. Come on, we'll go get our packs and hit the woods before dark. We can be there before the sun sets and set up so we can see these local creatures we need to catalog. We are reading our Kashmir story this week. If you're just joining us, it's called... What is it called? Nature Badges. So I hope you're enjoying it. Let's see what all the talk is about here. Oh, puppers. Nice. In the storm. Oh. Alrighty. He folded up the map and put it in his pocket, the two of them leaving some change behind and heading out as well. "Isn't there another way we can get that last badge?" Kevin asked, the fear creeping into his voice. "My parents told me never to go into the woods after dark, and yours did too." Lewis made a rude sound. "Well, neither of us can make a successful snare for the survivalist badge. Our wells never make water for the homestead badge, and our shelters always fall apart during the wilderness badge. It's either this one or we navigate back using the stars, and both of those require us to be in the woods at night. So no, I guess this is our only option before Friday. We can go camp out tonight, spot and identify the creatures, and be back by morning so we can talk to Scoutmaster Dan and get our badges. Bing bang boom, and we'll get our advancement on Saturday night at the bonfire." Kevin hesitated, but agreed, and by lunchtime the two boys had their packs on and were ready to head into the woods. They had told their parents they were going to camp out in Willie's backyard before the jamboree, and Willie had agreed to tow his part of the line as that. And Willie had agreed to tow the party line if asked. They stopped by his place on their way out and saw that he had a tent set up in the backyard and had made some pretty good mock-ups of them to cast shadows through the canvas after dark. "It helps with my shadow play badge," Willie explained, a badge that he was trying to get so he could move up to second-class scout. Willie's dad worked overnight at the gas station, and Willie's mom had notoriously bad eyesight, so both boys were fairly certain that it would pass muster. They left him to his shadow puppets and went off to search for local fauna. The woods around Kashmir were beautiful, but they were also dangerous. The boys had their sigils, something they had made when they were in Cub Scouts, and that all scouts wore when they were in the woods. They were supposed to keep them safe from some of the nasty things that hung out under the trees, and since none of them had been devoured by a boogin on their monthly campout, Lewis and Kevin assumed that they worked. They followed the map out of town, up the road that would take them to Stragview, and then off into the woods by the old mill. According to the map, the two of them would hike for about a mile, and then come to "a meadow with a thicket in the middle," Lewis read, scrunching his eyes. "Meadow with a thicket. I don't think I've ever seen it." "Me either," said Kevin, hitching his pack up. "It's farther into the woods than we usually go, too." "True," Lewis said. This part of the woods was a little different from anything they had seen in their time here. The trees looked older, gnarlier. The whole collection of pines seemed to be more at home in a Halloween display. The sun was beginning to ride low in the sky, their feet inevitably taking them closer to the place where they would need to do their spotting. They'd spotted a few local birds, a fox that ran across the path, and then a rabbit who scuttled into his burrow. And when a loud noise crashed through the thin trees ahead of them, they saw the ass end of a black bear as it headed towards the deeper woods, in no particular hurry. It was about 5 by the sun when they came to the edge of the pine forest and saw the thicket. It was strange, like a tuft of hair on a bald head, and the longer Lewis looked at it, the less empty he thought it might be. There were strange shapes, angry little bees that seemed to be working, and as the sun dipped, Kevin reminded him that he needed to set up their tent. Lewis shook it off and went to help Kevin with the setup, and as the sun set, the two of them were sitting in their tent and eating MREs. They didn't dare light a fire out here. Scoutmaster Dave had made that very clear, and as they ate, Kevin questioned again what they were doing out there. "We're here to spot local fauna. The guide is very clear that some of them can only be spotted after dark." "It's pitch black out there, Lou. What are we going to see?" As if in answer, the ground began to shake a little, and both of the boys hit the... Blech. and both the boys hit the canvas in their panic. The plastic smell of new tent was thick in their nose as the sides jostled and the fabric billowed. It was like being in the middle of a stampede, and as it finally tapered off, Lewis went to peek out of the tent to see what had happened. "Lou, don't," Kevin asked, but Lewis was already at the tent flap. By the light of the moon, an old spotlight for the an odd spotlight for the creatures who were heading for the thicket, he saw a group of them that he couldn't identify. There were quite a few of them, a regular herd, and their bodies were black and inky. Give me just a second, guys. Somebody's having a bad night out there. And their bodies were black and inky. They looked like aliens, a group of sleek black extraterrestrials that were making their way to the now bright thicket. There was a fire burning there now, the lights dancing as other creatures moved. They were hairy, their heads oddly misshapen, and as the wind brought their sound to the boys, it was chanting, the kind he imagined he would hear around an Indian's powwow. The kind he was certain he would hear around an Indian's powwow. The creatures were nowhere to be seen. They had not magically joined the dance. And as Lewis took a step outside the tent, Kevin grabbed his arm. "Where are you going?" he asked, breathless and scared. "I want to see what's going on," Lewis said, but Kevin yanked him back all the harder. "You can't, Lou. What if they get you? I can't stay out here all night by myself." "Well," Lewis said, "come with me then." Hesitantly, Kevin agreed, and the two of them headed off into the night to see what lurked around the campfire. They hunkered in the shadows of the thicket, watching as the slick black creatures walked amongst the hairy men. The men, like Bigfoots or some kind of apes, fed the creatures meat and lounged with them by the fire. The two species seemed to speak without saying a word, and as they lounged, watching the others dance, Kevin's eyes became as round as dinner plates. Lewis was taking it all in, though. These would get them their badges for sure. If he could just make it back to Scoutmaster Dan, they could both get their promotions. "Let's go," he whispered to Kevin, after what felt like hours had passed. But as the two of them turned around, both gasped as they came face to face with a tall man in a gray hoodie. "Shh," he whispered, and suddenly both boys were overcome with a loud and grating noise. Ugh. Loud and grating noise. It invaded their ears, their minds, and even seemed to hum in their bones. Both of them fell over, shaking as it rushed through them, and as they whited out, Lewis saw the man bend down over him before everything went out. They came to on the edge of the road, the one that led to the prison. Their gear was packed and lying beside them, and their symbols were lying on their chests, catching the light. "Lou," Kevin said, putting a hand to his head, "do you know what happened?" Lewis shook his head. "I remember the fire and the hairy men, but that's it." "We need to tell somebody," Kevin said, sounding scared. "We sure do," Lewis said, getting up and shouldering his pack. "We need to tell Scoutmaster Dan." "What?" Kevin said. "Why would we tell him?" "Because," Lewis said, grinning from ear to ear, "after finding these guys, they have to elevate us now. This is a find that no one else can top." And that is our Kashmir story this week. Let's see. Let's move on to our short stories. If you're just joining us, we have read our Monday story and we just read our Wednesday story. So we're going to go on to our Tuesday, Thursday short stories. Let's see. Take a 5-minute drinky here. Hope you guys are doing all right tonight. We're doing it a little early this week, if you haven't noticed, because I've got to go to a bachelor party tomorrow, so it's likely to run late. I'm hoping not too late, but I don't want you guys to miss out on your live stream because I'm out having fun. Let's see. We will move on to our Tuesday story, which is called The Price of Success. It's one of those stories about the door again. The door that appears in so many of my stories about writers. So, I hope you guys enjoy it. Reggie had the same ritual before bed every night. Shower at 8, pajamas on at 8:10, white noise machine on at 8:15, sleep mask on at 8:30, weighted blanket pulled up to his chin at 8:35, eyes closed and sleeping peacefully throughout. Yeah. Eyes closed and thinking peaceful thoughts by 8:45. All this was so he could be in the most receptive state by 8:45, so he could slip into the door dream. Reggie had been having the door dream since he was a kid. Kids he knew had weird dreams. Tommy Terry had told him that he dreamed he was a spaceman in a ship made out of macaroni. But Reggie only ever had the one dream. In the dream, he was floating in space, and there was a weird cord, something he would later learn was called an umbilical cord, stretching from his stomach out into space. It was like an astronaut's oxygen line, but Reggie didn't have a spacesuit. Reggie in the dreams was always naked. That would have been a little scary to a kid his age, but it seemed normal in the dream. He just floated out into oblivion, and eventually he came to the door. The door, capital D, was sitting on a little planet. The planet was so small that Reggie could have walked around it in 6 long strides. The planet was green with dirt and a little grass, but it was hardly the most important thing there. No, the most important thing there was the door. The door stood about 18 or 20 feet tall, and it was wider than Reggie could stretch both arms out, even as an adult. At first, the door had scared Reggie. He had tried to jump back out into space and get away from it. He could do that. He had done that for a while. But after returning to the door night after night, Reggie got curious. He remembered the first night he had gone to stand beside it. The first night he had heard the whispers. Give me a sec, guys. I want to sit up a little bit. Ugh. Helps the pipes. The whispers should have scared him too. It made the hairs climb up on his neck, but as he edged closer to the door, he realized it wasn't the scary whispers like his brother's horror movies had. It wasn't even the mean whispers that grown-ups did sometimes. It was whispering stories, the kind of stories Mom sometimes read at bedtime. It wasn't stories about the Berenstain Bears or Little Critter, though. These were stories like Treasure Island or King Arthur and his knights. The Reggie... Reggie went from being scared to enthralled as he listened, and he came back every night for more stories. Then, one day, He used one of the stories for Mrs. Macy's writing class. She loved it. She praised his creativity, and Reggie decided from then on to use more of them. There were never any consequences. No one ever accused him of plagiarism as he wrote. Reggie discovered that he could add little things to make them his own, too. The stories were amazing and so vast and well done, and as Reggie grew up, the stories grew with him. Soon, it wasn't just school assignments. Reggie was submitting the stories to magazines, to contests, and even expanding them into books. He didn't blow up overnight, but his stories on Reddit and on other smaller writing communities gained him a following. People were hungry for his work long before he was on the shelves of Barnes & Noble or Amazon, and his star only grew as he continued to write. Reggie, however, never thought of himself as a writer. Reggie was chronicling the stories he heard when he slept. Hang on, stomach made a weird noise. How do you do it, Reggie? Klein asked one afternoon as they ate lunch outside of Manny's Bar and Grill. How do you consistently turn out these amazing stories? Manny had the best barbecue in the city, in Reggie's opinion, and as he wiped grease off his chin and sauce off his collar, he shrugged. I sleep, mostly. Klein raised an eyebrow at him. Sleep? That's your big advice for a struggling writer? Klein was a copier. Yeah. Klein was a playwright, and he'd been having a lot of trouble finishing his last opus. Hang on. Klein was a playwright, and he'd been having a lot of trouble finishing his latest opus. Yep, Reggie said, through a mouthful of rib meat. I eat. A good night's sleep and right A good night's sleep and the right dreams, I suppose. Klein raised an eyebrow. What exactly do you mean by that? Reggie went right on eating, not in a big hurry to share his process. He had never told anyone about the door, no one he could remember anyway. He'd always been very careful about it, not wanting anyone else to find out. What if one night he just showed up and there was a group of people there stealing his stories? Reggie couldn't have that. He had a very cushy life thanks to these stories, and he wanted to keep it that way. There you are, Lou. You didn't miss it. We're about 2 stories deep now, so... Let's see. Klein blew out a breath. I hate when you do that. Do what? Reggie asked, laughing. You guard your process so closely. You always have. We've been friends since college, Reggie. I don't know about you, but that means something to me. If you were in a pickle like this, I'd sure share my process with you. Reggie rolled his eyes. Klein could be so dramatic, but when he told him so, Klein made a disgusted noise and stormed off. Suit yourself, Reginald, but when I am homeless and living on the street, you will have only yourself to blame when you have to eat brunch alone. Reggie shook his head and went back to eating. His process was no one's business but his own, and no matter how much he liked Klein, he wouldn't risk it. He needed the door, was wholly dependent on the door, and he couldn't keep his quota without it. If ever Reggie had been a real writer, it was now gone. These days, he was little more than a ventriloquist who listened to a very talented dummy. Reggie was, at his... Yeah. Reggie was at his apartment later, writing the sequel to his latest ode opera, when someone knocked. It was Klein again, and he was a mess. Klein was always kind of dramatic and ostentatious, but today he looked like a raccoon caught in the rain. He'd been crying, that much was obvious, and his usually well-coiffed hair was a mess. Reggie invited him in, putting his tale of two cowboys seeking their opportunity in the Sierra Nevadas aside, and asked him what was going on. The more he reflected on his outburst at brunch, the less it seemed like the usual melodrama from his friend. "Mr. Caspian has given me an ultimatum," he sniffed, and suddenly Reggie got it. Victor Caspian, head of the Thespian Society, and grade A bastard, was one of the biggest contributors to the arts in the borough. He was also the one who organized the spring and fall production, and could be extremely temperamental. He and Klein had a love-hate relationship, but Klein often depended on Mr. Caspian, buying his scripts and paying so he could pay his bills and fund his lifestyle of starving avant-garde socialite. "He says if my play isn't ready by the end of the week, then he won't be using my work for the spring production." Reggie shrugged. "Well, there's always the fall production." Klein shot him a dark look. "What he said was he wouldn't be using it for any production. A black mark from Victor Caspian could ruin me. I need his patronage, Reggie. Help me, please." Reggie shook his head, though not in negation. "Klein, you know I'm not good at stage plays. How much do you lack being done?" Let's see here. Somebody, Peg, you threw me off. It was, "What the fuck is happening?" I'm like, I don't know what is happening. Let's see. "Just the end," Klein said, nearly leaping to his feet. "I just have the end." Try that again. "Just the end," Klein said, nearly leaping to his feet. "I just have the ending number and the closing to write, and it's done. The problem is that when it comes to the closer, I can't figure out how to come up with it. I need help, Reggie. Please help me out." "What do you want me to do?" Reggie asked, not patronizingly, but serious. "I know less about songwriting than playwriting, and that's saying something." "Well, you were talking technique earlier. Help me with my technique. You write so much, Reggie. Where does it all come from? Maybe if I could get into that headspace, I could come up with an ending. Please, Reggie, I'm desperate here." Reggie put his head in his hands. Screw it. Maybe if only Klein knew about it, then it wouldn't be so bad. Klein and he... Yeah. "Oh, hey, Scully. I'm glad you could make it." Let's see. Klein and he could share it, so long as Klein kept his damn mouth shut. Klein would do that much. Reggie had to believe that. He didn't think he'd blab about it. It's not really a process. I really do just get ideas in my sleep. Look, sleeping... Yeah, missed a line. Klein started to get up in a huff, clearly thinking he was being pushed off, but Reggie grabbed his arm and drew him back down. "Look, sleeping is exactly what I do for my process. Remember how you're always fussing at me because I don't stay up late for parties all the time?" "Yes," Klein said testily. "It usually means I have to go with Tanya, and you know what a bore she is." "Well, I do it because I often get my best ideas in my dreams. I lie down, and my mind just wanders off as I sleep. It goes to a peaceful place, and I find my stories there. It's nothing technical. It's nothing I'm taking or using. It's just sleep." Klein looked skeptical, his face softened a little as he realized that Reggie was being serious. Is that all? Just sleep? Well, Reggie said, deciding to share a little more, pictures sometime. Can't talk tonight, guys. I'm sorry. All right, where were we? Picture something that gives you the stories. Like what? Klein asked, leaning in closer. Reggie leaned in closer too, not wanting anyone to hear. Well, ever since I was a kid, mine's always been a big door. It's like someone, or lots of someones, are whispering the stories under the door. I make little changes, and I make 'em my own. Klein smirked, expecting Reggie to scoff and say he was teasing. But when he didn't, Klein's smirk slipped off. You're serious, aren't you? Reggie nodded and took him to see his process, even offered to let him use his bed if he wanted to. Klein took it all in, looking slightly skeptical, but he agreed. He went through Reggie's routine, bedded down while the sun was still a line on the horizon, and Reggie went to sleep on the couch. There was no door for him that night, but when Reggie saw Klein the next day, the man looked changed. He looked like Scrooge at the end of A Christmas Carol. He looked changed, and not entirely for the better. I bet you could, Peg. I bet you could. We're reading The Price of Success if you're just joining us. So have a seat. It's just getting good. That's usually my problem, Leia, is finding time to write. I do a lot of voice to text in order to get it all out. Plus, my hands hurt sometimes, so, sometimes I have to get it there. All right. I understand now, he half whispered. I see what needs to be done now. Klein, Reggie said. He didn't think the man was going to stop for a moment. You can't tell anyone about this. Uh-huh, he said, but Reggie got up and stopped him before he could leave. Kleinhammer Marshall, and his actual name seemed to snap him out of it a little bit. You cannot tell a soul about this door. Do you understand? No one. Not a person. Klein looked up at him. Reggie didn't doubt the words that he said. Of course not. I don't want anyone else to know about this. It could ruin it. Reggie nodded, content in the knowledge that Klein would keep his secret. Klein kept it all right. He kept it till the day he died. That year's spring production was masterful, but it wasn't what Reggie had been looking at whenever Klein showed him snippets of what he was working on. It was a dark comedy, almost devoid of song and leaning heavily into the surreal. Caspian loved it, couldn't praise Klein enough, and Reggie began to notice that Klein went out less and less at night. When he asked about the play, Klein said he had scrapped what he had been working on and wrote the new piece in a 48-hour frantic pace. It was what the door said I should write, he said, his voice taking on a hollow sound when he spoke about it. Reggie kept using the door, noticing no negative effects from talking about it, and he didn't think much about it again until the Seattle conference, 3 years after Klein wrote his award-winning play. He was sitting in the dining area of the Marriott Hotel, taking advantage of their continental breakfast, before another day of convention panels, when a man came to sit with him. You're Reginald Foster, he said, offering a hand. It's a pleasure. I'm Jeffrey Dost. Reggie nearly spat eggs on the man. Really? The Jeffrey Dost, who wrote the Crystal Tower series. We are reading The Price of Success, if you're just joining us. Oh, someone else has just joined us. You get up here. Say hi to the people. Say hi, Normal. All right. Let's see. Where were we? He wanted to call BS, but the man did look like the photo on the back of the book. If the guy was cosplaying, then he was doing a damn good job. One and the same. I wanted to talk to you about something. Something that might sound a little weird. Reggie swallowed and nodded slowly. Sure, whatever you want. I wish I had my copy of Drassel's Step. I'd love an autograph. I've got one in the back of my car. If you'll give me 20 minutes, I'll sign it for you tonight if you like. I have a feeling we're going to be at the same convention after all. Reggie laughed, but something in the old man's face told him he wasn't likely to want the book later. Something told him that despite meeting his idol, a man whose books had been a backdrop for his childhood, he wasn't going to like what Mr. Doss had to say. I'll just come right out and ask it, Mr. Doss said, steepling his fingers. You've seen the door, haven't you? Whatever Reggie had been expecting him to say, it wasn't that. How do you know about the door? He asked, unable to stop himself. Lots of us do. Quite a few of us have seen the door. It speaks to us, and we use its stories to make comfortable livings for ourselves. I love your books, but the second I started reading them, I could tell that you had seen and heard it. You've done well, like most of us, but I have to warn you that taking them comes with a price. A price? Reggie asked, not sure what he meant. A price? Reggie asked, not sure what he meant. The door doesn't tell you, but those stories aren't free. I don't understand it either. Yeah. I didn't understand it either. Not until my friend Leonard died. Leonard, Leon Rothschild, he paused. And when Reggie didn't show recognition, he went on. Got a lot of his stories from the door. He wrote most of his series that way, and he was a celebrated sci-fi writer for decades. He was my writing mentor, a man who took me under his wing and showed me Sit down, you. A man who took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. Come on, you. Buddy, you're really in the way here. I love you, but you're in the way. A man who took me under his wing and showed me the ropes. And when he died, I was distraught. I didn't write for nearly a year, but it wasn't until I went back to the door that I noticed the change. I was listening to the whispers at the door when I heard him. He stopped, his face getting that look that people associate with seeing ghosts. He was there, behind the door. I could hear him, telling me the stories he never got to tell. I called his name, asked him how he was in there, but he wouldn't say anything, except the stories the door wanted him to tell. After that, I started listening closer. Have you ever heard of Earl Bean? Of course. He wrote the Minor Major novels that were popular in the 70s, Reggie said. Buddy. Reggie said, I recognized his voice too. I was watching an old interview of his for a highlight reel, and I realized that he was the one who was telling me the Crystal Tower stories since I was 20 years old. He was the voice that gave them to me. And there were others too. So many others in there. And they just keep growing. I heard Edward Carter in there the other day. Tracy Morris too. I've heard so many others, old friends and people I admired. And I knew then that I had to help people. Help? Reggie asked. How would you? All right, buddy. All right. You're distracting. Help? Reggie asked. How would you? It doesn't seem to matter. It does, though, Mr. Doss said. I hope it does, at least. I think that maybe if you stop using, then your time... If I could read... I think that maybe if you stop using it, then your time in it becomes less. I don't know. It's difficult to say. I stopped using the door about 6 years ago, right after Leon died. I have friends, however, who refuse to stop. One of them told me that he can't hear Leon anymore. I remember saying that Leon... I remember him saying that Leon would only use the door when he was really stumped, so maybe he only used it sparingly. Regardless, I just thought you should be warned, he said, getting up and collecting his cup. Whether you use it or not, it seems like the right thing to do. He spent the weekend thinking about what Doss had said, but the real surprise was waiting for him when he got back. The voicemail when he got off the plane was tragic. Klein had been in a car accident, a bad one, and he hadn't made it. He died about halfway through Reggie's flight, and that was when it all came home for Reggie. What if Doss had been right? What if Reggie went to that door and heard his old friend Klein telling him stories? He was sitting in bed that night, the ritual starting... the ritual of starting ingrained, but as he lay awake in his bed, Reggie didn't think he could do it. He lay there that night, waiting for sleep, dreading what voices he might hear from that massive door. If you should see that door in your own dreams tonight, what voices might speak to you from beneath it? Should you listen? What would... Would you pay the price? Well, that was our Tuesday story. I haven't lost anybody, so I guess you guys enjoyed it. You guys have been super chatty tonight. I like it. I like it. We got to bring some of that over into Discord. I love my little group over in Discord, but we got to get some more lively conversation, I think. Ugh. Hang on. Alrighty. Me too, Blondie. Me too. One more story, I think, is all that my voice is going to be able to take. We'll read our Thursday story. It's another short one. Not a short one, but like, a non-connected story. It is called Not Much Happens in Gavin, and I think you guys will like it. Let's see. Get the crap out of my lungs here. It's a town of about 15,000, well past its prime, and slipping further every year. It has two good places to eat, Marietta's Diner and an Olive Garden with that barely holding on look that chain restaurants always get in small towns. There was a drive-in, but it's really only open from May till Halloween. Gavin has no mall, but it has 3 different strip malls, each one containing a Dollar General. The local high school has its rivalry with Porter and Wiles. The Ladies' Auxiliary puts out charity dances. Hang on. Puts on charity dances for the local youth twice a year, or hosts a baking contest for this holiday or that celebration. And the town rolls out its colors for the 4th of July and Memorial Day, and tries to attract the usual out-of-towners to their slowly dying city. To their slowly dying town. I know these things because I've covered all of them for the Gavin Chronicler for the last 10 years. I'm Charlie Wade, one of 4 reporters who work for the paper, and I discovered the biggest scoop of my career in the sewers below town. I discovered it, researched it, nearly lost my life for this story, and now I can't say a damn word to anybody. It all comes back to the water in the end. The water and the ground around Gavin. Gavin has a lot of problems, but clean water has always been a big one. The ground beneath the town has a large amount of something in it that makes the water taste brackish and brimstony, and always has. The springs around the town are considered too toxic to drink from, and even bathing in the natural springs has been known to cause health problems, even death. The locals say it's naturally occurring lime deposits, but the contrast I've had tested... Yeah. But the contact I've had test the water says it's almost unnatural. The water is the whole reason I'm in Gavin in the first place. I didn't grow up here. This wasn't exactly my dream spot either. I grew up in the Midwest, and bad water is something we have a little experience with. The bigger the city, the worse the water seems to be. I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys about how the bad bad the water has gotten. Hang on. Let me show that. How bad the water has gotten in certain parts of the country. If I could find my spot. And when the stories started blowing up across the country, I knew it could be my big break. I was working in Boulder, doing a lot of what I do here in Gavin, when I stumbled across an older article about 2 hikers who had died in Gavin earlier that year. They'd been found dead in their tent a week after they had succumbed, and the Gavin Chronicler had blamed the water. We tell out-of-towners every year to boil the water before consuming, but there's always a few who don't listen. The woods around Gavin are beautiful, but they definitely have dangers beyond the brown bears who make the woods their home. I started looking into it and discovered that around 2 to 3 hikers a year actually die from consuming the water around Gavin. Smelling the next Flint, Michigan, in the small rural town, I packed a bag and sent an inquiry letter to the Chronicler to see if they were hiring. Turns out they were. I've been working there as their junior field journalist ever since. Let's see. It began slowly for me, like I suppose it does with a lot of people. The town isn't large, like I've said, but the people are unique. The younger residents rarely have to deal with acne or facial blemishes. Try that again. The younger residents rarely have to deal with acne or facial blemishes. Some of them have scars from accidents, but they find some of them with scars from accidents find them gone after bathing or drinking from the purified water in town. Most of them report no side effects from the water that are worse than sulfur burps or the odd rash on. Blech. Voice is cracking. I'm going to barrel through the story, though. If my nose would stop itching. Most of them report no side effects from the water that are worse than sulfur burps or the odd rash on the inside of the elbows or the backs of the knees. They grow up fine, most of them, and the ones who leave report that the rashes and the burps stop once they stop consuming the water. The residents who stay, however, undergo a startling change in their early 20s. It starts with the hardening of the skin. The skin seems to thicken, calcify almost, and since much of the town's trade is logging or mining, they see this as a good thing. I have a first-hand account from a logger who claims his partner missed a swing with an axe and caught him in the leg, just below the calf. He claims, and his logging partner backs him up, that instead of cutting him open, it bounced off and actually chipped the head of the axe. We thought the boss would be mad, but he says it happens sometimes and just told us to get back to work. As they get older, their arms shorten and their legs compact themselves. They start losing the use of their elbows and knees, though it doesn't really slow them down much. They adapt, or they pick up a power chair from Edward Foster, who does just fine for himself in a town like Gavin. He's very aware that he's taking advantage of people, but when I pointed this out to him, he just shrugged. People need 'em, I got 'em. Buy one or get the hell out. He said this from the seat of one of the nicest models in his... He said this from the seat of one of his nicest models, his knees now so swollen that he looks like someone in the late stages of gout. Sometimes I swear... Sometimes, I guess, it's good to be on top. Speaking of being on top, let's not forget about the only family in town that seems to be immune to these debilitating changes, the Gavins. The Gavins have been Gavin's first family for 10 generations. The founder, Chadwick Gavin, settled the land in 1820 and started the first sawmill in the area. The family expanded into mining and now owns 3 of the largest in the area. They mine gold, iron, and even a few precious stones, but the wealth flowing out of Gavin has been slow lately. It's a shame, but in many ways, the wealth we have used to make the town flourish was also its downfall. The mines went deep, the gold and precious gems flowed for a time, but something in the operation tainted the groundwater, unlocking the lime deposits that now slowly kill Gavin. Hey, Gamma. Glad you could make it. I bet that put an end to that, didn't it, Peg? Hope it did, at least. Let's see. Okay. That's the through line, at least, but I've had that water tested independently, and that's not what my guy discovered. The water test's positive for lime, yes, but also something like iron, but way too pure to be in the water. There are also half a dozen other things that shouldn't occur in nature. The sample you sent me, Chuck, is borderline radioactive. I'd wager that a lot of Gavin's citizens suffer from premature hair loss and probably growths on their skin if they live past adolescence. That was Dr. Klein, a professor at a large college in Colorado that will remain nameless. He's analyzed water samples before for me, helping me determine who's been fudging the water treatment budget so they can line their pockets, but he'd never given me a report like that. He had wanted to meet in person, had been pretty insistent that he didn't want to share what he'd found over the phone. So I flew out to Boulder one weekend to have dinner and collect the reports. This is unlike anything I've ever seen before, he told me over some authentic pasta, more authentic than what I've been eating lately at least. No one should be living in Gavin. No one. If these Gavins aren't using the mines for dumping, then I'll eat my degree. There is something very wrong under the surface of Gavin, and I'm not sure you should pursue it. He told me this about a month before he went missing. The circumstances of that disappearance are very mysterious, and a little frightening, since he had just since he had just gone since he had just been gone. Since he had disappeared about a week after talking to me. I can't help but feel like it's my fault somehow. It's like the information he gave me is the reason for this sudden abduction, but it also makes me all the more determined to investigate. There are no strange trucks coming and going from Gavin. There are no chemical plants or major factories in the area. We don't seem to have any industrialists or mob types hanging around looking to offload chemicals to a limping along mining town. To me, there was only one thing to do, and that was to investigate the mines. Now, I'm no geologist, and I'm certainly no Indiana Jones type, but I do have a map of the local mines from the Parks Department and a new pair of hiking boots. The maps are given out to hikers so they can avoid the old shafts and not die horrifically, a cost taken on by the town of Gavin. So I set out with my recorder, my cell phone, and a couple of fresh external batteries, and an indomitable will to chase this story to its conclusion. I only came back with one of those, and I wouldn't keep it for long. I decided to head to Groot's Grat, one of the oldest mines in the area. It's been opened by the original... It had been opened by the original Gavin in Gavin, a throwback to his Dutch roots, and it was supposed to be one of the deepest mines in the region. Ooh. Stretch break. Oh, sorry, normal. Alrighty. Okay, let's get back to it. Check. Okay. It had been closed in 1904 after some kind of cave-in, but I had a theory that it connected to the other cave systems in the area. They had opened it in 1835, and it was supposed to be deeper than any mine had a right to be. Old accounts said it was the one that had seen most of the wealth from the operation. Something that deep likely had some access to the groundwater in the region. It was a strenuous hike through some pretty bad terrain, but I finally came to the opening. The shaft is mostly just a hole in the ground, so my first order of business was to secure a line so I didn't fall in and break both my legs. The ground up here is pretty solid, so it wasn't hard to get the 20 or so feet of rope to the base of the shaft. When my feet touched down, I felt an overwhelming sense of vertigo. It felt like I'd descended farther than 20 feet, and as I switched on the light I'd brought, I could swear I had been transported to the center of the earth. It was noticeably warmer here, 5 to 6 degrees at least, and the walls didn't seem like your average mine to me. They were pitted, the ground around them seeming to have calcified into something like concrete. They were sturdy enough that I didn't feel too bad about going in, but I still turned and rammed a pin in so that I could run a rope back to the entrance. Okay, maybe I had a few more things than a tape recorder in my will. I'd also brought like a week's worth of rations, those little MRE meals, and enough water for 5 days if I wasn't greedy about it. I'd also brought climbing gear, ropes, pinions, and a sturdy hammer. I had enough rope for a decent descent, or a decent climb, and I figured I'd run it to the entrance so I could find my way back out. I did not want to get trapped in here and starve to death, so I figured that when the rope ran out, I'd turn around. So I figured that when the rope ran out, I'd just turn around. I also had some seal bags so I could put samples in, and I chipped off a little of the solid mass here to do just that. If you're just joining us, we're reading Nothing Much Happens in Gavin, so, have a seat. We're about the midpoint now. It didn't take me long to start finding abnormalities down here. I had barely gone 20 feet in when I noticed drag marks on the wall. Well, drag marks might not be the right word. These were more like gouge marks. It looked like something had sliced. It looked like something had sliced lines into the walls with its bare hands, and the jagged rocks on the ground seemed to prove the fact. And the jagged lines on the ground seemed to add credence to it. I proceeded with caution. Anything that could do that would probably mess me up pretty bad, but I suspected something less supernatural. I suspected that if I went to the end of the tunnel, I would find some sort of storage ground for something they would rather I not see. My guess was drugs or some kind of toxic waste. The drug waste might explain some of the abnormalities I saw in town, but then there was the usual lack of trucks or other methods of transportation. The waste being there would kind of hint that the townspeople had something to do with it, especially the Gavins. And as I came to the end of the tunnel, I found the last thing I expected. It was a mining operation, but a very strange one. The shaft began to corkscrew, looking for all the world like the patterns of a giant drill in the rotating. The patterns of a giant drill in the rotating path. I saw little honeycombs of something, an amber substance that shimmered in the pale light cast by it. There were these green strips of something that glowed running along the walls. They ran all the way down, the green glow making me a little woozy as I watched it descend. By that green glow, I could see something moving. They looked like, I don't really have a good way to describe them. They were like stubby little boulders, I guess. They waddled on their tiny legs, but when they extended their small arms to the rock, the sound of their burrowing was frightening. It sounded like a power drill, though I'm not sure how they made the rock squeal like that. They would work their way into it, pushing their whole body into the task so they could make a hole large. Bah. Struggling tonight, guys. I'm sorry. Spent too much time in the sun today. They could make a hole large enough to get at the strange liquid within. I wasn't really sure what they were doing, and I realized that I would need to get closer. I snuck as quietly as I could, the smooth surface of the bore providing no rocks or debris for me to kick and give myself away. It was as if the stones had been smoothed out with tools, leaving the path completely clear and easy to navigate. I walked past one of the undulating reservoirs with the amber-colored liquid in it, and it took everything I had to walk away from it without touching it. When I came to the creature that was working, When I came to the creature that was working and saw what it was pulling out of the wall, it all made sense. He was dragging that amber-colored stuff from the space, and it looked like taffy as he began to roll it around his stubby arm. He wound it until he had a strange, malformed bicep of the liquid, and then he turned and took it to the reservoir. I hadn't thought this far ahead, and pressed myself against the wall as tightly as I could. If the creature saw me, it made no sound, and when it placed its arm into the reservoir, the amber liquid seemed to flow into it and leave its arm completely clean. Then it turned and went back to work, and that was when I got a good look at it. Then, I see text-to-speech has failed me again. There we go. It might have looked like a rock person, a darker version of Ben Grimm from the Fantastic Four comics, but it could have also been any of the residents of Gavin. The thick bodies and the calcified skin, the short arms and legs with no joints, the strange craggy faces. They were all here, or at least they would be someday. This was what was happening to them. They were becoming these creatures so they could harvest whatever it was from the walls and put them into the... I can't talk. And put them into these reservoirs. I didn't know what the reservoirs were, but I knew I needed to get the hell out of here and tell somebody what was going on. This was the reason for the bad water. This was the reason. This was the reason for the bad water in Gavin, and I would bet anything that it was also what was turning people into those creatures. This was way beyond Pulitzer Prize stuff. This was full... This was a full-blown mystery that I had solved here, and something ran far deeper than... and something that ran far deeper than any writing prize. This was investigative journalism on a cosmic scale, and I had to get out of here so I could tell people what was going on. I managed to get back to the entrance I had come through, but when the men in the hazmat suits grabbed me, I was pretty sure that I was never going to see the sun again. Instead, they took me out of the mines and stuck me in a little room with a different man in a blue hazmat suit. He was smiling, offered me something to drink, but I could smell government from a mile away. This guy had the look of a fixer, and I was not about to get disappeared before my story could be told. Mr. Wade, we were worried that something like this would happen when you came to Gavin. We had really hoped that you'd decided to settle down and maybe conduct some less strenuous journalism, but it appears you've decided to put your nose where it doesn't belong. I think that would be for the people of Gavin to decide, wouldn't you? The man in the blue hazmat suit made a sound that would have been inappropriate at a fancy dinner party. What the... What's to tell? Oh, sure, they became... Try that again. What's to tell? Oh, sure, they become workers in a mine operation they don't exactly understand, but so what? No one's being hurt, and as you deduced, the water in Gavin does this all on its own. It's better for these people that they make a little money out of it and keep their families fed and safe. They can't go anywhere after they become like that, and the United States has a And the United States has a vested interest in the stuff they're pulling from the ground. What kind of a vested interest, I asked, not really expecting an answer. I'm afraid that's classified, but I will tell you that talking about any of this is likely to get you a cell in Leavenworth. Not one of the nicer ones either. One of the dark ones, where the food comes into a flap and there are no visitors. Whatever it is that you think you saw down there, I would suggest you keep it to yourself. I should have you eliminated, but the higher-ups are pretty sure that you put some kind of contingency plan into play in the untimely event of your death. So, we're just going to discredit the hell out of you if you spread this to the public. No paper in the United States, most of the ones... Bleh. And most of the ones outside of it would touch a story like this, and anyone who would believe you is too disreputable to be taken seriously. You can tell all your little friends on the internet if that's what you want to do, but it won't do you any good. Gavin belongs to us, and if you don't want to be a part of that, I would suggest you pack your bags and go somewhere else. I tried to argue with him, but he was right. If you've made it... I tried to argue with him, but he was right. He took all my samples, the evidence I'd collected, and sent me back up the trail with little more than a wave. If you've made it this far, you probably don't believe me either. I know how crazy the story sounds, but it's the truth. Gavin is a town where not much happens right on the surface. It's a town of secrets. It's a town of danger, and if you don't want to get caught up in it, you might want to steer clear. I'm going back to the Midwest. I think I've had enough investigative journalism for a lifetime. Alrighty, and that is Nothing Much Happens in Gavin. I think that will do it for us tonight, too. Yeah, I think that's about all we got going on tonight. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I always enjoy the stream, but it's always important that you guys do. We'll do another one next weekend on Saturday at the usual time. So keep a lookout for that. It's always good to see you guys. Hope you had a good time. This is going to be Dr. Plague signing off. Have a wonderful evening.